All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of PPK. We're continuing the PPK Perspectives kind of series that we're doing here. And I'm really excited today. I got three of my really good friends that I met from Franciscan University. And it's just the boys. We're all hanging out today. We're going to have a good time, talk mostly about what it means to be young and Catholic, talk about some of our journeys growing up, and kind of how to stay in that faith. And so I think we all have different things to share, and it's going to be a really fun time. I'm joined by Danny, Will, and Christian. And guys, just to start out, let's get a little bit of intro. You guys can introduce yourselves, obviously your names, where you guys are from, / where you're staying now, your age, and then what you're doing right now. So whoever can start, go ahead.
All right, well, I guess I'll go. So I'm Will. I graduated from Franciscan this past year, 2021? I'm living in D.C. with Danny, actually. He's in the room next over. There he is. Right now, I'm selling vintage clothes full-time, living the dream. It's pretty fun. Yeah. I'm 23, you know.
Yeah.
Simple.
Sweet.
All right.
So you go, Christian. You go.
All right. Work. So my name is Christian. I'm 22. I'm currently still in Steubenville, Ohio. The New York City of Ohio, they say, actually.
Little Chicago.
And yeah. But I'm currently in my senior year at Franciscan. Will and I actually met doing the same thing, selling old clothing. But yeah, we met at Franciscan along with everybody else here. I'm currently engaged, getting married next May. And this summer I got some work lined up, but yeah.
All right, Danny.
Sweet. Yeah, so I am Danny. I'm 23, graduated the same year as Will this past spring. Living with Will in the DC area. Right now, I am selling printers and copiers. So I work at Dunder Mifflin Sabre, essentially, and it's been a blast. I'm having a great time. And yeah, that's about it. I met Christian through Will, and through Christian and Will, I met Miko. So it's a great chain of events.
And Will brought us all together.
Yeah, we had a big bond over vintage clothing.
Goodwill brought us all together.
Yeah, Goodwill and vintage clothing brought us all together. And all right, guys. A lot of times at the bins, just doing Franciscan things that we don't have to get too into detail about. But just to start out, I'll give you guys a little icebreaker. Just because I asked the last two guests, Jake, who I brought on, you guys all know Jake, and then Nathan, who I just interviewed the day before. And I've been asking everybody, what are 3 movies, if you guys had to choose, that you can only watch the rest of your life? What are those 3 movies? We'll start with Danny.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Right off the top. I can give you guys mine if you want to start out.
Yeah,
I already said it.
Yeah.
Okay. I've already said it in the last 2. So like the 15 people that listen to this podcast, they've already heard it a couple of times, but I'll say it again anyways. So I got to go, obviously 3 different genres, right? Like you got to get a wide variety. For me, the comedy has got to be The Other Guys. I think there's room for others. I think like Step Brothers or maybe like a Talladega Nights is up there maybe, but for me, it's The Other Guys. And then in terms of like a drama / inspirational, it's Good Will Hunting for me. And then lastly, just take any of the last 3 Dark Knight series, or even I just watched the new Batman with Robert Pattinson, and that could be thrown in there too. So any of those, maybe I'll just say Dark Knight for my third.
All right.
Yeah,
bangers.
Yeah, those are some bangers. Batman was pretty good. I guess 3 top of my head. Gotta represent Martin Scorsese. Goodfellas, fantastic movie. Then probably I'm a big Hateful Eight guy, Quentin Tarantino. I think it was an awesome movie. Okay. And then also Good Will Hunting. Now, Good Will Hunting's like a weird feel-good movie for me. It's like a comfort movie. I'm not really sure why, but it's good.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to agree with everybody on the Good Will Hunting. just, one of those nights you want to have a feel good story and cry in your room alone.
Yeah.
That's the movie to do it.
Yeah.
But the movie, Miko's gonna laugh at this, but the movie Zodiac, my fiance knows how much I love that movie. I love Jake Gyllenhaal so much. I think he's an amazing actor. Just the roles I've seen him in. And then, probably the Nightcrawler movie, another Gyllenhaal movie.
Oh,
I'm a big thriller guy. Like I need to be on the edge of my seat the whole movie, kind of wondering what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you'll be on your toes the rest of your life with those three, dude.
Yeah. So for me, those are probably my three as of now. Could change.
Okay. All right, Will.
All right. So my favorite movie of all time, number one overall, Dead Poet Society, unreal.
Yep. That's a great one. That's a great one. That's a great one.
I've showed my girlfriend that movie like 3 times already. Every time we're like hanging out, like, hey, let's watch a movie. I'm like, we should watch Dead Poet Society.
That's a great one.
And then number 2 is probably Fight Club. I really like Fight Club. Super good one. And then number 3, I will say like probably Black Hawk Down.
That's a good movie too.
Dude, though that Black Hawk Down, I watched it at too young of an age and it shaped me.
Okay. I haven't watched that one. I'll probably have to check that out though. Okay, so now we'll start getting into it. Like I said, we all have, I think, different stories. I'm pretty sure at least me, Danny, and Will are cradle Catholics. Christian's not, and he could talk a little bit about that. But as first question, guys, so at least to a certain age, Christian, you can talk a little bit about it. But obviously we all grew up Catholic. And I think for a long time, even at least I could speak for me, I understood its value always. I understood that it was the truth. I never really tried to fight that too much. In terms of like in my head, I always said, I'll always go to church, and I just don't really want to be too Catholic because I was just a part of going to public school my whole life and basketball and loving music, that I always had this sort of dichotomy within myself. So like, how did you guys each individually kind of cope with maybe understanding the Catholicism and its value to you, and maybe the truth itself, and then also just kind of still wanting to be like everybody else? So we could start with Christian, I guess. Let's start with Christian.
Yeah. So Miko had kind of mentioned it. Unlike these guys, I did not grow up cradle Catholic. My parents grew up Catholic, but then for a while they had a stint in the Lutheran church. And so growing up, I was always in a church, and my parents were always really faithful Christians. And then probably around the 4th grade, my dad had a reconversion to Catholicism. And that, I was pretty young at that time. So honestly, I didn't know what a denomination was. So I just kind of thought we were switching churches. So my family soon followed my dad's reconversion. But for a while, it was kind of me and my dad. My dad was refinding the Catholic Church. And then I was, still at a very young age, probably until like 6th grade, I was kind of finding it myself. And then not until 9th grade, I would say, I went to my first Franciscan conference here. So that was kind of a pretty major thing. I think that's where the first time I kind of started my really personal relationship and journey with Christ. And I think the thing that really kind of did it was, seeing Christ in the Eucharist, and really understanding who Christ was in the Eucharist, and how that really was Christ, and just having a really powerful experience in adoration. I'm pretty sure everybody who's been to a Franciscan conference could say they've had a really powerful adoration experience. But that was that was probably where it started, until in high school, I kind of was named the really Catholic kid throughout high school. I did go to a Catholic high school too. And then, which kind of led me to Franciscan, and that's kind of, yeah.
All right, Will, let's go with you.
All right, so I would say I definitely, my parents and my whole family were all Catholic, but there was never like it was more of like I would say more of a Christian type of deal, not very traditional. There was obviously there was a sense that like my parents always instilled in me that like the Eucharist is powerful, it's real, it's Jesus. They really taught me that like, you can't receive with mortal sin. They told me the difference about like sins and all that kind of stuff. But like we would say our dinner prayers, we would go to mass on Sunday, but it was never like super like like a big driving point in our family. We was still there and it was still great, but I kind of like took my own like findings to really figure out what my faith meant to me was. But in high school, I went I went to a Jesuit school, which was terrible. I left after 2 years. The kids in my grade were awful people. The school itself was really weird. Not a big fan. And then I was homeschooled for the rest of high school, which also wasn't great because one of my good buddies was homeschooled and he was, I mean, as atheist as a god. So I would just spend all my time with him. And we were getting into trouble in high school. I got into some serious trouble. Don't need to go into too much detail, but basically cut all ties with those friends. Talked to my cousin Dana McCartney. He was 2 years older than me. He said he was going to Franciscan. I was like, oh, I'll check that out. I'll like look into it. He goes. He comes back. He tells me how much he hates it. So I'm like, all right, that's off the table. I'm not going there. He hates it. And then after his first year, he comes back for the summer. He's like, dude, I really did love it. Like, I found a great group of friends. You should really look into it. So I applied, got in, go to Franciscan. My first semester of college was, I mean, it was college. That's all. Just whatever. And so, but then I met at Franciscan. Obviously, we have households, basically just brotherhoods. I met the Prods, and I met Danny and a few of my other friends, Austin and Nick and Luke, and we all became like a good little crew. And we were kind of whipped into shape by the Prods, and that kind of sprung up my faith again. We were forced to go to daily mass for like 2 weeks in a row every day. We were, forced to go to confession. I mean, not forced. It sounds terrible when you say it like that, but I mean, they were like, you guys have to go to confession. And so that kind of revamped everything again. And then I go to Austria, kind of lose it a little bit because, we're overseas, it's getting crazy, whatever. But then I would say from senior year to now, I've had like a true, actual, like refined it of my faith. And I've like been steadfast in it and I've been living in it. I've really found peace and power in the Eucharist, adoration, and Mass, in the tradition, and something I've really come to love is the saints and Mary. Those two are just something that I never really learned about or I was taught about or really saw any power in growing up. But now in these past 2 years, it's like that is really what's been kind of driving me back and keeping me going, keeping my faith part of my life.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Danny?
Yeah, so like Miko said, I was born Catholic, raised Catholic. My dad went to Franciscan, my mom went to Villanova, so they were both very, very Catholic, and I would say that was pretty influential on me as a kid. When I started getting a little bit older, though, I did the thing where I was like, this isn't cool. Nobody, like, none of my I had like friends growing up that were also cradle Catholic, and we all had that community and stuff. But I would say as we all got older, we kind of all just real like, oh, this isn't cool. This isn't like the cool thing to do. So throughout, I went to a public school, and for my first 3 years, I wasn't hanging with a good crowd. I was kind of just doing my own thing. I would say I was agnostic at best, but I wasn't. That was never on my radar at that point. I kind of just threw my faith completely to the side. And then I joined this club called Young Life, which is a non-denominational Christian club, and that's where I would say I started my relationship with Christ, and I actually found the importance of being in a relationship with Christ and growing in that aspect. But I left high school, kind of to Will's story, Christian story, being known as the Catholic kid. I was known as like the Young Life kid, and the guys that I was friends with, I would try to get them to come with me to this club and stuff, and I would just be made fun of literally publicly in front of like a whole classroom, kind of just like roasted. And yeah, it wasn't good. And then once I kind of made that decision, like this is something I really want to pursue, I transferred. I actually, became homeschooled with one of my best friends, Nick Kane. Um, and yeah, I didn't want to go to Franciscan again because I didn't think, being a Catholic was cool. I was like, oh, I got this cool Christian non-denominational thing going. Ended up agreeing to go to Franciscan, give it a semester, and yeah, the first semester, like Will said, was was college. It wasn't really anything fruitful or good, and then prods and internship stuff kind of whipped me into shape. But I would say I really wasn't aware or just didn't know the actual like Catholic faith. I didn't understand it. So when I went to Franciscan and I started taking all these classes like Intro to Catholicism, Foundations of Ethics, and all these other things, I started to actually realize that there was truth in this. And over time, I still work on that every single day. But I feel like now, as like a testament, I go to traditional Latin mass every week, and that's just like Will said, saints and Mary have been a humongous factor in my life and in my faith. And but yeah, that's pretty much, I guess you could say, my story.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's important to like get at least a background on these guys. And I think one of the reasons I'm bringing these three on, obviously, other than being really good friends of mine, is that I've just seen so much of them and me. And I think we've all bonded over being how we probably felt like different from a lot of the people that we grew up with or that we've seen, and just this idea of being Catholic. And before, like I grew up and I didn't have any Catholic friends, even back at home. Still don't have anyone that I'm super close with, maybe one or two that were Catholic. And these are three guys that at least, during our time at Franciscan, I think we really felt like we had a good effect on one another. And we just maybe saw things a different light, and we bonded over not only our faith, but, something stupid like vintage clothing. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it felt like, oh, wow, like it brought us together for some weird reason. Like we're the four weird kids wearing, whole and painted crew necks and, old Carhartt pants and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's been good. One of the things I do want to dive a little bit deeper into, though, in all of our stories, obviously as young men, we all struggle with lust and a lot of those things. I don't really want to we don't have to get too into that, but I'm just curious. Like for me, one of the big struggles was, like I said, I went to public school my whole life. I thought a lot of kids that were at church were just weird. Didn't feel like they were like me. I didn't really ever go to youth group growing up because I felt like I didn't relate with any of those people there, which is obviously a big reason why I started this podcast. So I felt like I just wanted to kind of be the person that I wish I had saw when I was 15 and being like, oh, wow, you know what? You could actually still be yourself and be Catholic. And I didn't know how to do that just yet. And there's obviously a lot of stuff there that I could go into depth about, but not really about me. I'm the host here. So I'm just curious for you guys, at least, for me, a big thing was like, I'm a basketball. I identify myself when I was younger as a basketball player. Right. And I identify myself a lot with music. Me and my brother would spend so much time back when LimeWire was a thing. I don't know if you guys remember that, downloading illegal music and trying to do all that. I mean, me and my brother would spend, almost hours every day, like looking at music. And so, we found ourselves just so much ingrained in like, basketball and hip hop is so integrated. And then my parents, not necessarily being, raised up in the faith, they had kind of a similar background in that. So I felt like it was hard to integrate those two. And I'm just curious for you guys, this is a long way to get to the question, but like, what was that like in the sense of we all grew up with the faith, at least some sort of it, or some form of it, I should say. And what were those things around you that you found that you had a hard time with, like fully committing? Obviously it's different for everybody. But I don't think any of us are like, I don't know. I remember being at least in high school and seeing some kids and be like, oh, wow, those guys are like really about it. I'm not that guy. And I had my things of being, whether it's being cool or whatever it is, or maybe I just liked girls too much or whatever it was. And I didn't want to feel that guilt or stuff like that. Like, what was that for you guys, especially maybe in like the high school years?
Well, similar to you, I think music, especially like throughout high school, was pretty big. To where I look at it now, And I really don't even listen to that much like hip hop, because I would say, or rap, because I would say like, especially like the time we grew up in high school, that was, and it still is, was the biggest thing, was hip hop and rap.
Mm-hmm.
And not until like probably like my sophomore year of college did I really kind of realize what I was putting in my ears. And like, as to a secular person, that would sound like really stupid, but and I think a lot of secular people are even realizing today that, you know, this, you know, really vulgar rap is not healthy. And not only is it not healthy, but it's not right to be kind of, you know, singing or rapping about women in a really degrading manner, or just anything like that. So I think for a lot of people, I think music is definitely something that is really hard to let go of, because it's so mainstream, and you might not really see the importance of like just, you know, clicking a button and listening to a song for like 2 minutes. But yeah, I would say similar to you, that was a big thing for me. And not until I really started listening to like just not
Miles
mainstream
Davis.
stuff, I guess. Yeah, Miles Davis. Yeah, just instrumental. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
What's the other one? The Indications.
Oh,
Indications.
Cruising to the Heart.
Yeah.
Cruising
And
to
it
the Park,
honestly,
baby.
I don't know. It did open up to like this door of you know, how much great music there is out there, and that like a lot of like people don't really listen to anymore. Like the classics, I guess you could say. As corny as that sounds.
Was there at least for you, Christian, like anything in, obviously it's weird like being the Catholic kid when you're literally at a Catholic school. Was there like things, obviously you were living your life in a different way, right? That's made people see you that way. Was there like anything else that you felt like, oh man, really like held me back in that certain way? Or were you at a point, because at least for me, like, yeah, I was known as a Catholic person, but never in a bad way, because I was essentially like everybody else, except I went to church on Sunday, you know? And so they didn't really see me in a different light. Were there like anything else surrounding, at least, that you felt like was such a hard, or it was such a big obstacle for you that you like couldn't fully commit to the faith, besides, you know, being like 14 or 15? Obviously it's kind of tough, but were there any other things?
I mean, I think similar to you, I think all young men, like having, you know, growing up, lust is a huge thing, you know, to let go of. And kind of what Will had said, and Danny, reading, I think, and I didn't even mention this the first question, but something that was very transformative for me was like reading about the saints, and reading about Our Lady and what she says in all these apparitions. And especially, like, I guess I can, you know, kind of highlight one was St. Augustine. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody kind of knows the story of St. Augustine, and how, you know, how hard it was for him to fully commit to, you know, from his, you know, his desires, just his worldly desires. And that, I think, for anyone, especially a young man growing up today, is really important to kind of look at that, because now he's known as one of the greatest figures in the Catholic Church ever, and just to see how he overcame it was insane, and he was way worse than anything I've ever done. But yeah, so
No, it's good. Yeah. Will?
Oh shoot. So, I mean, music definitely, but you know, I don't even get it. It's the same as Christian. You know, like rap music, it just wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't enjoying what I was hearing. It was just too disrespectful, and it just kind of made me feel a little, just not the way I wanted to be feeling. But also, just like, I think the idea of like drinking really held me back too, because it's such a wild concept. Because like, as Catholics, we drink. It's like a thing we do, but I never fully understood of like the idea of getting too drunk, the idea of having too many drinks, the idea of, you know, being able to just hang out and drink beer. And not saying I had an issue, because I never ended that. It was just, you know, I was a young kid, I was in college. But like, you would wake up after like a Saturday night on Sunday, you would push mass off until 4 o'clock. You would show up like hungover. You wouldn't receive. And I was like, oh, I can just hit a confession and I'll, take a day off next week. But it really started to hold me back because instead of, making mass my, first thing I do Sunday, I was going to breakfast, I was smoking cig, I was relaxing, then going to mass. So it was just a small little thing. And then obviously I still drink now, but it's very tame and very chill. But like, it just held me back in a way that like everybody's doing it. All my friends are here. All the guys I look up to are doing it. So it was just it was just like it just made me think that it was like what I was doing was okay, and it was totally normal. But in reality, it really just there's no good that came out of it, besides the funny stories. And at the end of the day, those aren't really worth anything. So it's like, I don't know. It's just drinking was such a tough thing that really held me back because I just abused it, and I wouldn't let. I was too concerned about where the party was. What are we going to do on Tuesday night, instead of being like, why don't we say a rosary? Why don't we do adoration? And like skipping commitments, going out for day drinks. And it's like, that's all fun and games, but it's really just such a small part of everybody's life that really does take control of you, even if you don't realize it. So I would definitely say that was something that really held me back and just kind of put, like, clouded my idea of faith and, what was really good and true.
Yeah.
Kind of, well, just going off what Will said real quick too, was especially me going into Franciscan. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I had been to Franciscan a lot, obviously for conferences, but coming in, like, I guess I really didn't know the school that well, but I literally thought it was like just a place where saints were made, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I had no expectation of. I literally remember asking somebody, not that I wanted to go to one at the time, but I was like, "Are there even parties here?" And he just laughed at me, and I was just like, I think we have this expectation at these really Catholic places that people aren't going to sin and people aren't going to excessively do things like drinking. But I mean, there are a lot of, there are people, like, we've all been through tough times, like Will was saying, and everybody. And I've been through tough times at Franciscan. And just because we're at a really good place where Christ is very easily like attainable in terms of like mass, like 5 times a day, every day, like confession every single day, you have to put in the work. Like it's still your prior. You need to make a priority of doing these things. Christ isn't going to be the one to like do it for you.
Yeah, definitely. Danny?
Yeah, kind of building off of like what Christian said with expectations. One thing that really kind of, I wouldn't say like held me back, it honestly kind of scared me, was going to these conferences. Like, I would go in high school and stuff. I went to every summer. There was a group of people from my like family friend group that would all go to these conferences together. And when you go to these conferences and you see these kids are 100% about it. They all have the matching conference T-shirts. They all have like the little chants they do and stuff. And for someone who's wasn't religious at all, and was really, worried more about his self-image and like how people perceived me as being like, oh, I need to be this cool guy. That scared me to the point when I actually made a deal with my dad. I didn't want to go to Franciscan. Like, that was, to make that be very clear, I wanted to go to Penn State, Pitt, James Madison, all these state schools. And I told my dad I would go to the cheapest school, and ended up being Franciscan somehow. And then, go in there. I remember like the first month before I got to Franciscan, I was so scared. I was just like, this is going to be my college experience is just going to be a Steubenville conference for 4 years. And I was terrified, honestly. I think, kind of actually going to Franciscan and seeing people that kind of struggle with the same things I've struggled, and even for a little bit freshman year, finding that group of people who, this sounds bad, but also, drank and partied and stuff, it was somewhat relieving, just because like, oh, this isn't just a conference all the time. And kind of that was something that held me back for a while, I would say. And then I think right around after, I remember my trip to Assisi, when I went to Austria, I did the trek up the mountain, and I did it by myself. And I kind of just had this long, just meditative, just period where I was just thinking. I was like, I have to make this for me. I can't think about anything else. Like all these things that are going on in my life that are like ruining my life, like partying too much, listening to the wrong type of music, watching the wrong type of movies, and just being so ingrained and dive into that kind of thing. That was a big factor to hold me back until I just finally decided, like, I have to let all this go. Like I this isn't fruitful. This isn't who I want to be. Like I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I am not the person I wanted to be when I was 10 years old. Like when I was 10 years old, I thought I was going to grow up and be this great guy. And then to be, 19, 20, or even like 16, skipping class to hang out with friends and, to expose myself, like do some drugs and stuff and just completely just skip class. I literally didn't feel like the person I wanted to be. And there was just a moment on that mountain where I was just like, I just got to get this all away. This isn't me. This isn't who I wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. That's beautifully said, Danny. And I think I like some of the points that you guys are bringing up, especially with Will and what he was saying, and then Danny and all you guys really bringing up that this idea of Franciscan. And so like I'm a little bit different to where like drinking was just not really a thing. My parents just didn't really do it. Just wasn't really seen in like a good light at all. I didn't really have a big desire growing up, at least not in high school, to do it. And then it wasn't actually Christian was the guy that really kind of introduced me to it a little bit. But we don't have to get into this big topic. And this is something maybe I can bring you guys back on and we could talk about. But I think it's a good point. You guys are bringing it up here. Like when we're talking about sort of parties or drinking at Franciscan, I think some people could be like a little bit worried or triggered about that. But what's important to understand is that like when people are 18 and they're going to a college, and no matter where you go, like the faith, you have to make your own regardless. So yeah, just because there's 8 masses on Sunday doesn't mean that like that individual still has every ounce of free will to decide they don't want to go. And I think there's a certain level of maybe from the parent side, right? Of like, okay, if I put this kid here, he better be doing everything that I want him to do, and then when he doesn't, I got to get him to the army or something like that. And it gets to this rough point when I think for a big part of it is like, at least for parents, and something that I want to do is like, learn how to teach your son or your daughter how to drink responsibly when they're like 16 at the home. Like do those things and teach them those decisions, because a lot of things is like there's a big bubble of kids at Franciscan. This is not supposed to be like a roast of anybody, but I think you guys bring up a good point in that there's this bubble and a lot of people haven't experienced it. And so when they get the freedom, they want to do everything that they possibly can, and they can get caught up in a lot of stuff because maybe they haven't really sat down with themselves and said, why is it that I actually believe these things in an interior way? Not like don't recite paragraph 2293 from the catechism why you believe it, but actually understand deep in your soul, like, why is it that we say that getting drunk is a mortal sin, or what does that do to your conscience and your decision making, and then how you affect this and that. So there's so much there. And it's just interesting because like I guess I'm just trying to maybe warn some people like, no, this is not some sort of triggering thing. And one of the beautiful reasons why like I had these 3 people on is because these are people who have struggled with everything else that every other college kid has struggled, just like me. And we've all gone through these things, and yet we're in this ongoing conversion that we all should be on. And we're all just figuring it out in different ways, in a lot of similar ways. Obviously, like we said, through vintage clothing, but also through like traditional mass and things like that. So I guess I'll actually go to that question. You guys have all talked about different turning points for you guys, but I think for all of us, returning to tradition has been huge. That completely changed the way I saw mass, completely changed the way I saw my faith. And so I guess, I think we see the younger generation kind of moving towards tradition and things like that. Like it's really like the boomers that want the drums and violins and mass. Like I don't know. I don't think we ever asked for that. They just put it in there, and then we had to grow up with it until we realized that like that actually wasn't what the church was supposed to be and things like that. So, I mean, we'll start with Danny, and you guys can all talk about at least your kind of thoughts on tradition, what has that done for your faith, and why you guys think that younger people are moving back towards tradition more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just a little like backstory, like before I even became Catholic, I thought, so when I did have that faith that was completely non-dom, just strictly sola scriptura, I was kind of thinking like, where are they pulling all this extra stuff from? Like, where is all this other stuff coming from? Because I read the Bible a lot, but I just never really understood the ties to um, the faith and actually the Bible itself. So kind of going to Franciscan and taking all these classes and seeing the actual Bible verses and how the church got to have that stance on something because it came strictly from the Bible, it opened my eyes completely. And the more I've done like a dive into the faith and a dive into the catechism and then dive into, like other things, I've kind of slowly but surely gone just naturally. I couldn't tell you like there's a split moment where I was like, oh, I need to become traditional. It was just the more that I've learned and the more that I feel like I've matured, I guess, in my faith. Like you said, it's just returning back to tradition. It's a beautiful thing. It's really the way that the church was intended to be made, and the way the church, like mass, was intended to have. So I guess going off that, just figuring it out slowly and surely, just the truth, I guess, just the real way. And I can say now that I'm a proud trad.
Danny, why do you think young people? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? Like, I don't think if you're going to be putting on a show at mass, I'd rather go to the one that looks cooler, which is the Protestants. Like, if there's really no difference except you're telling me that it's that the Eucharist is really Jesus, yeah, everyone's like, receiving on their hands and treating it like it's like it's the same thing at the other service that they're doing, then like I think that the younger people are going to be like, well, what's the difference then? But I mean, at least why do you think you see more young people returning to tradition?
Yeah, so kind of going off what you say, like I would go to just like a church, like, again, non-denominational, and they'd have like this big band, and there would be this big singer, and he'd be playing the guitar, and everything was like that. And then, not that this is a bad thing, but going to Franciscan and singing kind of the same thing, like at mass sometimes, and seeing the people which is great, I'm happy for them, but the people like jumping up and down around, having, like these big moments, and I'm just kind of like, we're in mass. Like I thought mass was like this very sacred thing that like everyone should be like praying and being very attentive. For me, it was just personally, I didn't have a problem with it, but I just found it distracting for me. To where now, I guess a lot of people our age are starting to realize this too. Is just going to a trad mass, for example. I go to Latin mass. The whole time, I remember you and I, Miko, talked about this before we got on here, but it was just prayer. Like it's my time. Like it's prayer between me and God, and it's a lot more intentional and it's a lot more serious. And I find that a lot of people who are becoming Catholic and who have been Catholic for a long time are just returning to that because of just the prayer aspect and just being in a Latin mass and really being fully focused on what's happening, not focus so much on like how high my hands are raised and how like the music's playing and everything's kind of going that way. Now, again, that's not a problem. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but for me, I felt like it was a lot more real.
Yeah, definitely. Will?
So it basically, for me at least, I remember I was actually at the bins one day and I was by myself and I was reading this
When
book.
are you not?
But I was in between like the switches or whatever. I was reading this book to kill time, and I think it was called what? It was like the 12 Secrets of Eucharist, I think it was. And one of the points that the author made was that the Eucharist is as it's like consecrated, all of the heavens and the saints, all the souls in heaven, Jesus, have come down to the Eucharist. They're all present there with us as it, becomes Jesus. So in my head, I'm like, why would we be singing these goofy songs, making a whole scene when we should really be praying and praising and representing the Lord in like a beautiful, holy, traditional way that it was originally done, since Jesus and all of the heavens are down here with us. So it's like it was like when I saw people just singing, dancing, laughing during all of that, I was like, this doesn't seem right. It feels like if this didn't feel real, it felt like it was more of a play. But at the traditional masses, it's like there's there's the incense burning, there's the chants going on. The priest has even got his back to us, and it is just so focused on the Eucharist and what has really come down and is actually happening in front of us. And that's what really opened my eyes up to tradition. I was like, this is what was happening, 3,000 years ago. This is what's been happening since the beginning of the faith. This is the tradition that is carried on unchanged for the entire history of, the world. Like, this is what it was meant to be. And so that really just opened my eyes up to it. And then as I started going more and more to more traditional masses, I just caught myself actually praying. I caught myself in actual thought and, like more just conversation with God. And I was getting more out of the Mass. And then I started, like receiving on the tongue. I started going to more and more Latin Masses, which led me more and more to adoration and more of appreciation for the Eucharist and Our Lady and the saints. So it really just, the tradition just really opened it up for me. Once I really understood what was happening at Mass and what was going on, it changed everything. Because before I thought Mass was just here to show God we love Him, which obviously is true. But it was also, I realized that it's like, this is a sacrifice, and we're coming here to like plead with God to forgive us, love us, let us praise Him and be thankful that He allowed us to even, sit there in those pews. And like today, even at Mass, the priest's homily was saying like, why are we all here? Obviously, it's because we're Catholics, but like 100 years ago, we didn't exist, and now here we are, sitting in front of the Lord because He willed it. So Mass just became more real for me, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Tradition just made me realize that what is going on in Mass is real, and it's like the truth, and it's powerful, and it needs to be celebrated and loved and cherished and kept tradition. Basically, that's just. It was just so much more like fulfilling. Leaving Mass every Sunday.
Yeah.
Dang, that was real. That was actually like an actual real.
100%.
It was just better. It was just all around better.
Yeah, that's good. Christian.
So for me, growing up, right whenever we had like my dad had his like reconversion, and then I had like a conversion. Me and my dad, I think we wanted to experience like all forms of Mass. We would go to all these churches. We would like church hop all the time, and then we found ourselves at the traditional Latin Mass church in Pittsburgh, and we were going there for a while. I was like in like the 7th grade probably, and we really liked it. It was just it was something that I think was like challenging for us, trying to like understand these prayers, especially if you're going to like low Mass and everything. And we loved it so much. My mom, and I still have it and use it. My mom got us 2 1962 Roman missals, and we would use them. Then we kind of veered away from it and just started going back to just regular Novus Ordo Mass. But I think the one thing I would say too is that the charismatic Catholicism is really, for me, that was like the gate for me. Like kind of it opened up. I was in 9th grade, so like for me, like that was something that I think needed to happen. Some sort of like charismatic worship really opened my eyes to like my journey into the Catholic Church and my journey into like who Christ really was. Like seeing Christ so blatant in the Eucharist, and that was actually Christ, and me understanding that was kind of through the charismatic movement. But for me now, it's just something that I couldn't stay with, especially probably, I mean, Miko, I feel like we had the same kind of like conversion to being trad at the same time.
Yeah.
Like our sophomore year, we were like, not that we were charismatic, but we were just kind of going to school Mass and everything. And then we realized like, we were like, wow, like this could be better. Like,
Yeah.
and so, but Yeah, so for me, I think it's just I couldn't be content with where I was, especially being like charismatic. Like I needed to um, push the boundaries, I guess, in trying to like search for Christ on my own. Especially like I mean, it's so easy to see Christ in the Eucharist if there's a band playing in the background with flashing lights and like, a songboard that shows whatever song's playing and like people are crying, dancing, and singing and laughing. But to for me, it's so much more to be at a Eucharistic adoration, just five other people there, completely silent, and Christ is sitting in that monstrance up there. And for you to see him the same way you saw him at the charismatic worship is, to me, and is so much more incredible. So to where, like I said, that's kind of where I'm at now. To I'm way more traditional. And I read something really good by the GOAT, Father Rippiger. He and it was about like merits of the Mass, and it wasn't saying traditional Mass was greater than Novus Ordo, but it was saying, he made really good points to where like there's a way to merit the Mass, and by having the chalices being so much more beautiful, merits more. Having beautiful architecture merits more, because it's the God, it's God of the universe you're celebrating. So it shouldn't just be this table. I mean, it can be, but if it shouldn't just be this table, an altar, and a few hinky-dink chalices. Like, you should be going all out. Like, this is Christ we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that kind of really shook me, was like, you're totally right. I mean, it's totally right, in terms of like, we should be doing the most we can. We should be spending the most money we possibly can to distribute Christ in these chalices, or to put our sacrifice in these churches, these beautiful churches. And it kind of sucks that modernism is kind of taken over to where like we go to these churches now and it's just like really ugly, it's just, we're not meriting the most we could from these masses. And I think with that, it kind of opened up the door too of like, because I feel like nowadays, like a lot of these churches don't express the importance of, like, I honestly think that's one of the biggest corruptions in the church now, is not stressing the importance of being in the state of grace, especially receiving. Because I just know so many people, especially in the past, like I know they would not be in the state of grace and they would be going up to receive Christ, and that is really bad. And it's one thing if they don't know, but it's the church's problem that they don't know. They obviously don't express that enough. And with the traditional Latin Mass, or traditional masses, I should say, they're having confession before every Mass. Like every single church should be doing that. Every single church should be doing that. But no, most of these diocesan parishes, especially around me, they have it once a week on a Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Right.
And it's just like, who's going to that? I don't know. So especially just like I said, how traditional masses are like presented, how they present Christ our Savior, but also how they, the way they are able to give out the sacraments, especially like I said, reconciliation. That was really transformative for me. Just because, like I said, in high school, I didn't know until junior year of high school you couldn't receive Christ unless you were in the state of grace.
I had no idea until my sophomore year of college. So
exactly. And whose fault is that? That's the church's fault for not telling me, or for not expressing that soon enough, especially in this age we're in, to where, most of the Catholics, what's the percent? Half the church doesn't even believe in the real presence of Christ, like in the
30,
Eucharist.
30%. Or 70 don't believe, and like 30 do believe.
Yeah. So it's rough out there, to say the least.
Yeah.
No, I thought you brought a good point. With at least the charismatic opening that door for you, right? Because it is interesting, but then the thing that seems to happen is that it becomes unfulfilling. I think that's what we're saying for a lot of this. The charismatic stuff became unfulfilling for us, right?
Yeah. I would say,
Yes.
I think that we have to like kind of preface it. Like, we're not saying praise and worship or any of these things are bad.
No, not at all.
Like,
Mhm.
I
No,
think
it's
honestly, I have so much respect for people that weekly go to a FOP or a praise and worship thing. I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. But I was just thinking, like, in mass, it sometimes for me, and I feel like for a lot of us, it kind of felt like a distraction, or if anything, kind of it wasn't doing the justice of what mass was really meant to be.
Yeah. No, and here's the point that I really wanted to make too with it is that these conferences are awesome. I went to a Super Bowl conference in San Diego. It's like 5,000 teens. It was amazing. I'll never forget some of those. Like my first conference I went to, Father Mike Schmitz was a priest for it. Second one was actually Father Dave. I enjoyed a lot of these things, but I think some of the issues is that when we only present these extravagant conferences with lights and teens and fun and all this stuff to kids, is when they go home, how do they see Jesus? They're not going to get that anywhere else. And it's a point when, like, when we grow up, like when we get out of Franciscan, right? It's kind of a similar thing. Like, it's so much easier to do it then, but it's almost like this low expectation that we have for teens that they can't meet Christ in silence because that's the only way to hear him. It's the only way to hear him. And so, like, I've been reading this one book, and I just like keep lagging on it. It's been like 6 months probably, but I will hopefully get through it. But it's The Power of Silence by Cardinal Sarah. And this whole idea of like, you can't hear God unless it's like pure silence. And there's this point of like, that's a big reason why I like to go to low mass. And it's like, I feel like I don't have to understand everything. I don't have to respond. I don't need to be this active participation, which is like, I think kind of nonsensical if you think active just means you have to be verbally participating, as opposed to like participating in the sense of you're sacrificing your own self, you're in your prayer. That's what true participation is. And so I think it's tough. Like, I think what you guys have been saying, right, there's fruit in that stuff, and I agree. I think it can get a little rough if that's all you've ever seen Jesus is. And then so when you get into adoration, it's like, oh, I'm bored and sort of, I don't really know what's going on and how do I hear Jesus? It's because, well, yeah, all you heard was, you're a good, good Father in the background. So now it's just silence. You don't know what to do, you know? And so I think that's tough. But I think that's a good point. And this is not obviously, it's not like the Bash Novus Ordo hour, but it's the reality of like, this is what what we're all saying is the reality of the youth and what we're seeing and how we truly feel. And yeah, I think we keep moving on. One thing I wanted to hear from each of you guys is sort of what you guys felt like you were missing growing up in the faith. And I know for me, like I said before, I felt like I was missing other examples that I felt like were relatable to me and really saw them living out their life. And I think if we were all like, I think it'd be super sick if we were like 13 and 14 and like Bob Lesnevsky was our youth minister. We'd probably be like, you know what I mean? Things would be different. But we all don't get those. And I think there is special people, but it's hard, when people like the Scott Hahns of the world, people are doing amazing things and so beautifully intelligent and they have, such gifts, but it's like none of us will ever be Scott Hahn or Patrick Madrid or Trent Horn. And it's really hard for a 12-year-old to like relate to those guys on a certain level. I know that was a big piece missing for me. Obviously, a good community of Catholic friends too. What are some things kind of for you guys growing up to where you felt like was kind of missing?
Well, I can definitely say that like I definitely was missing a community when I was growing up, and like the knowledge of like the faith, like actually being taught and really shown. And I think that goes hand in hand with like not having a community. Like when you grow up a kid and all you have is your public school friends and they're not really into the faith and you are, when you're 16, you're going to follow the majority. You're really going to follow that. So like when you don't have a community to really bond with and, form with the faith through, it can be really difficult. But one thing I've been thinking a lot recently is now with like the advances in like technology, like the ability to listen to these podcasts and like YouTube videos and all like good, you can like access like Pints with Aquinas or like Father Mike Schmitz. You can listen to these podcasts so you can kind of have a little bit of a community if you don't have someone or like people that you're like with.
Yeah.
Going off what Will said too. Growing up definitely missing that community. I had a lot of really good friends like in high school, but just no one that really shared my same interests. Not also like worldly interests, but also like just in building a relationship with Christ. And was it not until I came to Franciscan whenever, like, you know, Miko and I met each other, and, you know, we're wearing ripped jeans and Carhartts, and we're also talking about like just we're, you know, talking about apologetics or something. So that was something that's obviously just changed my life. Was just friends I met at Franciscan were not like any friends that I've ever met before. People on the same boat and everything. But I guess I'll switch it up too. Is something I miss, because I listened to a lot of podcasts growing up, especially in my high school days. I'd be at the gym or running on a treadmill and listening to Pat Coffin. But something that, like, especially in college, that I found something that was missing was, you know, Our Lady. I have probably the past like year has been probably one of the most transformative years for me, especially with, you know, just understanding who Our Lady is, and like she's not just the mother of God. Like she is. That's a pretty big title, I guess you could say. But she's not just Christ's mother, his worldly mother. She's co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and, you know, so just kind of understanding who she is, and, you know, what she is kind of, you know, said to the world. She's revealed herself multiple times to the world through apparitions, has been just mind-blowing to me. And just like, you know, I have it right here actually. The Glories of Mary, this book, talking to my dad, has changed his life. But then I started reading it, and it has, you know, changed my life. Saint Alphonsus Liguori, but just like every sentence is just like, you're just like kind of mind blown. Like he'll give metaphors to who Mary is, and like, you know, Mary craves for you to come under her mantle and to lead you to Christ, and just like that is insane, because I think especially Mary is like our biggest like rooter for us to gain eternal life. She is the person on the sidelines during the marathon that is rooting for us the most to get to her son. And just realizing that has been like so peaceful to me. So I think that's been a huge thing for me, at least.
Okay. Danny?
Yeah, so I think mine is a little bit different, because I was very blessed from a very young age to be in a very devout community where all my family friends were all devout Catholic, and all my friends were raised Catholic. So I didn't really have that feeling of, you know, being alone. But I guess before I was Catholic, the one thing that really was like a driving factor to me actually taking up the faith was confession. Like when, like, living solo scriptura, I can name 1,000 times where, you know, I've talked to somebody, I'm like, this is still weighing on me. I know, like, I'm forgiven by faith and faith alone, but this doesn't feel like I'm forgiven, you know, like, just doesn't feel real. Like, I feel like I'm cheating. Like, is it really this easy? I can just do whatever I want and be like, sorry, Jesus, and I'm good. But then I won't say what it was, but there was something in specific that had weighed on my heart for years and years and years and years and years. And then when I went to Franciscan, and the first time I ever actually confessed it, it's hard to describe. It sounds a little corny, but there was this tremendous burden and weight had just been lifted off my shoulders that I actually genuinely felt forgiven. Because I had told people this before, and they had told me, oh, you are forgiven. You know, you're a child of God. You're forgiven. But it never really felt like I was forgiven, to where I went to, and I confessed it for the first time. And I walking out of confession, I literally just like, wow, this is real. Like, this is a real forgiveness that I had not felt before this. So I think that was probably something that changed everything for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are all great. I think, there's so much there. It's just so funny. You know, it seems like we kind of taking shots at Franciscan, but like I said, I was mentioning with Jake, is that the most beautiful thing of Franciscan is the community. Yeah. And then finding guys like this. And then the most depressing thing is like getting out of there and then realizing that you're never going to find those people like that again in your own circles. So there's so much great things there. But as we kind of move forward, and I have just a couple more things to point to you guys. What do you guys see as sort of like this new era of evangelization? Because it's this weird point where I think a lot of people are moving to tradition. Those are the ones that were open during the COVID nonsense, and they're the ones that are giving us sacraments during those times. I think people started to realize that in a big way. And then the people who said, "Oh, I can just live stream it," are just still live streaming it. 2 years later, after all that stuff happens. But along with that, there's also this side of, like what Will was saying, of social media and the ability to have podcasts and YouTube videos. And there's just so much out there that we can do. And I think even in, what Will is doing and a lot of things like with the vintage stuff and like really highlighting things about like Mary and t-shirts, or like, things with Jesus on there and saints, things that, me and Christian would do too back in the day. I think those are what we see as like new era of evangelization that really weren't done before. Like, where do you guys see kind of moving forward, at least with society, and sort of like, I don't know, I guess the potential and the opportunity, the platforms that we could have? We could start with Danny.
Yeah, I guess one thing I've kind of noticed is I feel like there's a certain wokeness now in the church. I feel like a lot of non-traditional churches I've gone to are like kind of stepping on eggshells with what they say, and they're kind of being trying to accommodate for everybody. And then I literally one of my favorite homilies ever was earlier this year. The priest came up and the first thing he said was, "I will preach the Catholic faith in season and out of season. I will do it. I will always preach the truth, and you will never hear anything else from me outside of that." I think a lot of people who are becoming Catholic and are actually diving into the faith a little bit more are realizing that we're kind of a little bit under attack when it comes to that, and that like it's very hard to find true Catholic people and true Catholic churches in some senses where it's just they don't care. They are going to preach the truth, and regardless of how it makes you feel, regardless how it makes other people feel, this is what we believe, and we're going to stick by it. And I think a lot of people, especially our age, are just drawn a little bit more towards that, especially with like social media and how you see that everywhere else. I feel like that's definitely something that has drawn me at least a lot closer to it.
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah,
there's maybe like I think there's, at least for me, there's two, and I would say one of them definitely isn't like new, but I think it's pretty relevant to like at least all of us, because we're kind of like, as we become young men, and as we form our relationships with our girlfriends, wives, fiancés, and soon to be hopefully like fathers, I think that's going to be like a big wave of evangelization, is like fatherhood, and following in like Saint Joseph's footsteps, and parenting your children and treating your wife in a way that he would like treat Mary. And so I think that is going to be a really big resurgence, because there's definitely like a big resurgence in the faith, I would say, in like our age range. I'd say like there's a big come around for young men in the faith, and as they form their relationships, I think they're going to be evangelizing and raising their kids, hopefully in a very traditional, holy, good way. And then secondly, I think, at least for me, like at Franciscan, obviously, as it seemed like we were like kind of trashing on it earlier, but I loved it because I was just surrounded by men and young guys that really followed in the faith, and that really evangelized me. Like, I would be at a party and I would see a guy turn down taking a shot because he's like, no, I gotta wake up for mass, and he would turn down the shot. I'd be like, oh, cool, that's neat. Or then I would see a guy, and him and his girlfriend walk to mass together, receive, and then go and like sit at the port for an hour together. I'm like, oh, that's just like, that's something I want to do. That's something I want to like live in. And then it's like the way guys I knew, how they talked about females and other people, and just how they carried themselves. Really, it was never like, I was never like, at least for me personally, I was never evangelized by the guys and the people be like, go to mass, go to mass, go to mass, do this, do that. I was really evangelized by the people that just lived it and really showcased it by just the way they acted and the way they carried themselves. So I think that is like one of the should be like a new form is just by living it and respecting what we believe in and really teaching that truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
So obviously, I think with what we were saying with like media and everything, I think that's going to be huge. But I think one thing to should be like a concern for a lot of people too is using media and like the internet as tools, because at least me, a lot of these material things I can get like really sucked into and almost have like an addiction to, like just, I feel like we all have, those days where we'll just scroll like on Instagram. And I think just kind of shining light on that and showing people that these are just tools, and that Christ is like the ultimate, like, we're literally using these things as tools to help you get to Christ. But also something that I think is big for me is, we have this generation of people that have like we've seen it, like all of us, we've been around people who are very interested in like culture and fashion and clothing and like music and everything, pop culture and everything. And there's so many people that have such good taste. And I think kind of using that modern take to bring people back to the church. Do you know what I mean? And like I said, we all are really into like, I feel like clothing and streetwear and, using that to evangelize people, like what Miko was saying about Will, and what we were doing for a while is, we'll collect these, Catholic shirts from the 90s and we'll, just post them on Instagram and show them that they're, as corny as it may sound and people might not understand, but it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. But kind of entering a market and finding what these people really enjoy, but putting Christ on it, I think is really cool. But yeah, like I said, I think with kind of like, especially these new, a lot of these like Catholic accounts can be very like boomer, like we were saying, kind of doing what Miko is doing with like PPK and World Blaze is, having a modern take on it, but bringing people back to the tradition of the church. Because I feel like a modern feel for like an account is very appealing, but not taking away that tradition from the church. And I think that is like a really big thing, to make accounts and pictures and posts look really visually appealing, but also highlighting the tradition of the church.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because like I don't think like Fulton Sheen thought in like 60 years like these weird kids would be posting clips of him on Instagram, like on his little phone devices in this way and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what everyone was saying, especially Will, about living it, is such a big thing. And I think like even kind of pointing to what Christian was saying a little bit, and I've touched on this before, like the way that you live your life, and also like even the simple ways of like using social media can be powerful tools. And that like it doesn't have to be like a selfie of you at adoration every day that you have to post for people, but like at least the idea of like just show your life. You know what I mean? I think your account, what you listen to, the things that you do revolve around what you care about the most or where you put the most interest towards. So if that's a faith, and like let that show through those things. Let that show through. I used to have a big fear, like I said, going to public school my whole life, of like, oh, I'm not going to put this on my story, or I'm not going to retweet this. But it's like the point of like, I think there's a witness into it, because I guarantee one person's going to message you and be like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, that's so true, or thank you for sharing that, or whatever it is. There's a sense of courage, and it kind of sounds a little bit like weak, I guess, because we're using social media and that's supposed to be courageous just to repost something. But for a lot of people, it's hard. Like they don't have, they feel like they can't have a voice and stuff like that. And I think those are powerful tools that we can use. But like the most important thing, I think what Will was saying is living it out for sure. Okay, I have one last question. Oh yeah, go ahead.
And just sorry, but like quickly, as like Miko was saying, like posting stuff to your story, it's kind of like marketing the faith. It's like a commercial. You might not, if you like see a commercial like Doritos, you're not gonna like really think much of it, but maybe you'll go to the gas station, like, oh, Doritos sound good because you saw that commercial, so subconsciously you would just think that. So like if someone is scrolling through their Instagram stories or scrolling through their feed and they see you post something, they might just look at it for like 10 seconds, but then that 10 seconds could like subconsciously lead them to act or say or do something. So I think it's just like the simple stuff like that is really undervalued. It's just like just sharing, clips or whatever, just sharing stuff that people might see.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've had those experiences where like I haven't had direct relationships with people in the sense that it was centered around faith, but they knew kind of like at least kind of how I was and how I operated. And then like randomly I get a text and like, hey, can you pray for me? And it's just like, yeah, why not? Like it's weird that for some reason people will go to the people that they know are, quote unquote closest to God or practicing a faith. And then they'll be the ones to reach out and say, you know what, like pray for me. And so I think, what you said, those things can be powerful. I got a last question for you guys. Real quick, doesn't have to be long. Maybe, you know what I mean, as powerful as a sentence or two as you can give me. What's your guys' advice for young people, whether it's high school or college, probably mostly, even young 20s? What's your guys' advice to them in practicing their faith, dealing with the same things that like we've all dealt with? Let's using your own experience, kind of like what would you say? I'm not going to call anyone out on this one. Might be tough. Whoever feels like they got something good, you can share first.
Man,
I'll go.
All right, Dan.
You go. Okay.
No, you got
it. I think, kind of, it's tough because I don't want to sound like I'm somebody that's like has it all figured out, because I can guarantee you and I can tell you everybody who's listening to this probably knows who I am and understands that like I'm still learning a lot. But I think that the important thing is to not lose faith. And I think, honestly, I can't really think of anything like for people who are struggling with, finding the faith, who are like in their 19s and their 20s. But I challenge the people who are very faithful to like meet people where they are at. Like one of the beautiful things I loved about Franciscan was households. And then one of the beautiful, like of our households, I loved Prods and I love Brothers is for this reason as well, is that meets people where they're at. And because if you're like outside and you're looking in, it's a little bit scary. And for a 19-year-old or 20-year-old who's a little bit scared to actually make a full commit to this, like there's got to be somebody like a role model or someone that like will meet you where you're at and just like work with you in that sense. But it's tough. It's not easy, especially when you graduate. I'm sorry, I went over a little bit over 2 sentences, but when you graduate, it's it's tough. Like I don't work with anybody who's Catholic. I don't see a lot of people who are Catholic. So it's really just take the time to find that community of people. Like we have each other, like us four guys, and we don't even, besides me and Will, like we don't even live that close to each other. But you have to find that sense of community where you can and you're comfortable, really just being real with each other and just being like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm dealing with. This is how I feel. And it can honestly be like, I don't want to go to mass. I don't see the importance of it. Be honest with your friends. Be honest with your accountability partners. Like that's the only way any of us are really ever going to grow.
Facts.
I would say my biggest regret at Franciscan was never getting a spiritual advisor. And I'd say that's like, do that and then just, take that first step. Just at least begin your journey. Because eventually you'll get there. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but just get a spiritual advisor, find a good group of friends, and just like take that first step and keep working at it, really.
Yeah. Similar to what Will said, from my experience, like I've been talking to the same priest once a month since like my junior year of high school. And that was just because I heard him say a mass and I was like, this guy seems cool. And I went up to him after mass. I was like, can I like talk to you, like meet with you ever? And he was like, yeah. So like I said, I've been doing that for the longest time, and he's helped me through a lot. And the other thing is to just, especially from my experience, like keep persevering if you're upset with people with not the best, you want more Catholic friends or people who are more into their faith in your life. Just keep persevering, keep praying for relationships, for God to bring people into your lives for you to continue to grow, and also keep praying for your friends that aren't Catholic. Like I have so many friends that aren't of the Catholic faith. Miko, you have so many friends. Like everyone has so many friends that are great people that aren't of the Catholic faith. I pray for them every single day, just for them to continue to, be good people. And so, yeah, I think prayer too is just one of the big things, because, we obviously can't do this all on our own. We don't have the answer to every single question. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for all those. And honestly, just for joining me in all this. And I just want to say once again, for anyone who's like made it this far, Priest Robert King or Ward Blaze, or at least this episode specifically, is never meant to be us, on our pedestal and letting people know what to do. It's all about us revealing all of our faults. We all know that we're flawed people, and all of our friends who might watch this, or at least see that this is happening, knows that we're all flawed people. And the point is not to show how perfect and cool we are. The point is to show how broken we are, and the point that like you can be there too, and you can strive for it. You can go through all the things that we've all gone through. And I already said it, but like that's why I'm bringing these people on. People that I've grown super close with, and just felt like damn, I wish I had you guys with me the whole time I've been living. And so and it's just one of those things where when you do find those people, and it's gonna be tough. I don't think everyone can find community in that special way, unless you go to Franciscan and find the perfect household for you. And there's a lot of things that have to go right, I think, for you to find that community. But I think at the end of the day, hopefully like this podcast and other things can be at light to you. And I think when you like start standing up for truth more and more, people will respect you for it. And I think you'll gain friends from that. You'll lose the ones that don't matter, and you'll gain more friends that really do. And it doesn't always have to be like what Christian is saying. I didn't have my 3 best friends that I still have from home, still aren't Catholic, but I pray every time I do rosary. I pray for their conversion, all that stuff. And I think, throughout, like what Will was saying, throughout the way you live, you'll evangelize and you'll witness to those people. But at the end of the day, it's about you taking it up on your own. And I think that's a big theme of this podcast has been like, you got to figure out your own way. We're all going to deal with the same things. We all deal with the same temptations. None of us are any different. The only difference between me and those guys is that I'm brown and shorter. But other than that, we all go through the same exact things. And like, that's the beauty of all of it. So with that, once again, thank you guys for coming on. I want to have these guys back for sure in another episode. Let us know if you guys liked it. Let me know in the comments if you want to see anything else, if you want me to touch on anything with these guys or whoever else. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, we'll see you guys in the next episode, and have yourselves a good one.